to the Doctor Who Marathon. I'm your host McEdam, and today we're going to be talking about the K9 episode Oroborus, written by Deborah Parsons and is directed by Daniel McEdam, who actually makes his last directorial story for the K9 series. We would later be talking about him when we get to the 12th Doctor story, as he directed some 12th Doctor adventures. Now, I was actually really looking for this story. The creative team of Deborah and Daniel McEdam, they created one of the first episodes that I really enjoyed, and that is, of course, Sirens of Ceres, the story which borrows a lot from Mean Girls. And I really enjoyed that episode. I had a lot of fun with it. It's not perfect, it's not great, but it was the first K9 story in which I can generally say I enjoyed myself. So we have that writing team and that the writer and director now tackling the story of the Oroborus. For those of you who don't know, the Oroborus is a creature originally from Egyptian mythology, but has been adapted to Greek and as well as other mythology, of a giant snake that eats its own tail and is supposed to be a representation of the circle of life, on how to keep it alive, it eats itself, and in certain stories it's an immortal that feeds off its own body, and this has been adapted into other mythologies in different forms, like the Midgard serpent from Norse mythology, just to name a few. But Doctor Who has a fun relationship with the Oroborus, as it later will become a part of a character the Doctor knows, and it is to be part of a tattoo. But this story basically establishes that the Oroborus is actually a real-life entity that exists within the Doctor Who universe. A creature that is actually a time-sensitive entity that can actually has very similar properties, if you will, to the Weeping Angels, the very successful villains that appeared in Series 3 of the revived era of Doctor Who and would reappear numerous times during the Matt Smith and Peter Capaldi era. So I was really looking forward to this. I was going into this story thinking, having not high hopes, but having hopes enough that this story would be at least entertaining. And for Daniel McEdam's last story for the series, I'm ashamed to say that this story just isn't that good. It just did not live up to the Sirens of Ceres, whether that was due to budgetary reasons, timing, or just a lack of enthusiasm from the cast and crew is debatable. But what I know for a fact is that what we get on the screen isn't really any good, let's be honest. It's a story which seems to be trying to get somewhere, tries to get off its feet and tries to sell something, but really just comes off as an extra part to add onto the Wikipedia page, because this story deals with, in certain aspects, with the character of Starkey and a bit about his backstory, his origin, as the start of the episode, the start of this story is that you have our main characters, they're just talking about and having a laugh and stuff. However, the time machine, the time manipulator of Professor Griffiths' machine starts activating, and seemingly it just seems to start on its own, and our characters seemingly turn it off, with Griffiths being very concerned, thinking that one of the characters might be involved, but they've all claimed that they had nothing to do with it. So K9 goes around searching for the house to see if there's anybody else that might have activated the machine, only for K9 to find absolutely nothing. And he goes back into his thing and tells Professor Griffiths, right, it's nothing. So they start expecting Starkey, who also throughout the story seemingly has this massive itch, and we also learn that he has some sort of marking on his arm, which has always been there, but only recently has it been started itching. He also sneezes very prominently. Now, this story also tackles with the concept of time repeating itself. This is something which has been established before in Doctor Who. I can't remember which story it is. I believe it's a series 18 story where the Fourth Doctor and Romana 2. It's like that scene, that scene, I can't remember what story it's from, where they keep repeating the same moment over and over again. I think it's Meglos. I don't know, I can't remember. Maybe it's the Horns of Naimon. But there's a scene in which, they keep repeating and they're trapped in an endless loop of time. And you can do stuff fascinating with that. You can have characters learn something about other characters by these characters without them actually learning and knowing anything. And you could have this really fascinating tragic story in how these characters essentially, I think of great stories like Turn Left, in which you have this thing with time, something's gone wrong with time and it's going to be fixed, but there's the tragedy of when it gets fixed. None of these events seemingly matter. The torture, the pain, the experiences of our characters don't seem to matter in the grand scheme of things, because when time is fixed, it's fixed, and all our characters' pain and misery seemingly goes away. And you could tell a really great story here. However, here they repeat really either moments that seem to have very little to do with anything, or stuff just sets up certain plot lines, with Darius seemingly asking Starkey for money because he did a job for him. It's not really explained what job it is. Well, it is explained, but we as audience viewers don't actually know what this job is. And time seems to be erasing every these few seconds, so that Darius keeps asking Starkey for money, and Starkey is like, "Are you serious? You told me that the other day." When he asks Georgina, who's asks there about the other day, she has no memory of it. And Starkey seems to be very vulnerable at this point in the story, especially when the machine starts turning on again. He goes in to try and fixes it, to which he does, but then Professor Griffiths comes in and is like, "How dare you, what are you doing meddling with the machine?" And Starkey is like, "It turned on by itself, just like yesterday." And then Griffiths doesn't actually have no memory of yesterday, or at least what he's on about. And so Professor Griffiths believes that Starkey activated the machine. Now, why would he think that Starkey activated the machine in the first place? Well, this story establishes something with Starkey getting this itch on his arm and seemingly is getting ill with a cold. Professor Griffiths decides to look into his DNA and finds out that his DNA is human. However, there are traces of alien DNA mixed in with it. He is essentially has alien DNA, alien antibodies that protect him from much more stronger, deadly and more unknown diseases to the human race. And Professor Griffiths only knows of a couple that have done this to themselves and to their child, and suspects that Starkey might actually be the child of this couple that did these horrible experiments on themselves to try and make them more immune to alien bacteria. The premise I'm telling you right now sounds vastly interesting, doesn't it? You've got time repeating itself. You've got Starkey learning about his heritage and the pain and misery that could have come by. But the story does nothing, very little to it. For it, Starkey might have some scenes where he's concerned and he's thinking about his parents, but it never really feels like it's a great part of the story, other than the fact that his DNA means that he is actually immune to the creature, and they soon learn that this creature is an Oroborus, an alien creature which is actually seemingly been known by the people of Earth during this point in 2050, with Professor Griffiths basically explaining that these creatures basically they eat the future. They basically eat off potential energy, the life you would have had if they didn't meddle with time. Very similar to sense to the Weeping Angels, and they even gives the example that a planet Centauri was turned into a black hole because the Oroborus came to this planet and ate away its future, turned it into a black hole. That sounds vastly interesting and vastly great, but the plot doesn't really do anything for this narrative structure. It's mainly due to a plot, and whilst we hear great little tales of how the Ouroboros destroys planet and stuff, when we actually see the creature and we actually see what it does throughout this episode, it doesn't seem to be doing that much, apart from repeating 3 seconds of history, which they learn with K9, who realizes that a part of his memory banks have been corrupted due to time intervention, presumably like 3 seconds, and he tracks this technology down to the basement where the Ouroborus lies. And there's a scene. I want to talk about this scene because in context it's absolutely hilariously awful. Basically, K9 comes up, they basically like, right, we need to get the Ouroboros, we need to go downstairs, get the Ouroboros and put him right underneath in the basement, right underneath where the time machine is, as a little part of the segment actually goes underneath and actually hits the basement itself. So they've made up this plan. There's only one problem. How did they get the creature, the Ouroboros, to go down to this particular area that they needed to? And K9 comes up with this plan that Starkey, being immune to this time eddy, would be a nice snack for the creature who might want to feed off its potential energy more than most. Seemingly, with Starkey's immune to time traveling interference, he would be a perfect candidate as a vessel for the creature to eat. And so they basically use Starkey as bait. And you would think our characters would have some issue with this, especially Georgie, who has been established at this point to have some sort of feelings for Starkey. But she kind of hugs him, and the character's just like, okay, good luck. It's actually really funny thinking back, because it's like, not that they don't show any concern, but they show very little, and it's to the point where it's really bloody hilarious. And Starkey, despite him sacrificing his life, we never really feel like he's in a threat, and he never feels like he's that much in danger, even when he is cornered at one point. Also, let's talk about this small little action scene where we actually do see the Ouroboros, this giant snake-like entity, and Starkey basically tries to maneuver him into the basement. A young male character is being chased around by a snake in claustrophobic, corridor-like environments. Does that sound familiar? If you haven't clicked together yet, it is the ending to Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets with the Basilisk. It's the exact same ending, only worse, because the action scene is so short and so unenergetic. Starkey kind of just slowly walks away as he leads this creature here, and we get this little tense moment where there's no doors, and Starkey's like, right, you've got to activate the machine now. But no, you might get caught. Just activate it now, and then the machine gets activated, and then Starkey is revealed to be fine. But that scene happens way too quick, but no tension and no suspense can happen. And when Starkey comes up and is like completely fine and they all hug each other, it's like, well done, you did it, Starkey! As if he's learned some sort of great moral compass and his story has been a great adventure on him. But it doesn't feel like that. there's no connection with him and his parents and him trying to learn that, he's not part, he is not the combination of horrible scientific experiments. He basically just learns that his parents might be horrible figures, and that, he does have parents, and that's it. And the rest of the adventure, the Oroborus subplot and all that, doesn't really have anything to do with him as a character. And so, despite the story feeling like it's supposed to be a Starkey-centered story, it really just comes off incredibly flat. And that's all I can really say about the story, with the ending, Griffiths giving Starkey this screen-like device and telling him that, these couple in this picture might be, I think they are your parents. And we also get a joke where Griffiths is like, oh, and Darius says he really does want his money back. I'm only joking. I forgot to mention, there is actually a really funny scene. There is a scene in which I did genuinely laugh, which is actually one of the generally good bits. And that is the scene where our character, Georgie, basically realises that something is wrong with time, and she realises it by looking at the news. With the news presenter keeps on repeating the same thing as he talks about the stock. I can't remember what he's talking about first of all, but then he has an interview with this woman who owns the train stations, and it's like a magnificent discovery today as all trains are on time. And they have an interview with this woman who she's just kind of like, yes, we are proud to announce that our trains have been 100% on time. Some trains have even arrived before they've even left their previous journey. And that scene keeps getting repeated. It's hilarious. I do love that scene. Is genuinely funny, and I do like that. If you want to watch this story, just watch it for that one scene. But apart from that, there's not really much to talk about here. This video is very short, but what can I say, really? That's Oroborus. Overall, it's despite it being the creative team to one of my more favourite episodes in the K9 canon, this story really undermines how not good this series can be. And it's dull, it's boring, it's just not that interesting, and I do feel bad for Deborah Parsons and Daniel McEdam and all the actors and creative consultants on this show, but nothing is clicking together here. And the story, I think, had the potential of some really great storytelling, but it just fell flat on every conceivable level, with the one standout being that news report scene. But that's it. That's all I can talk about really about Oroborus. So that's Oroborus. So join me next time whilst the Doctor and Amy have an interaction with the Olympics 2012. So join me next time for Good as Gold. And I'll see you next time on the Doctor Who Marathon. Ta-da!